Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are now still within the topic of nominal and effective, but now focusing on one of the subtopics or subsections, which is the focal date of an account. That is where we are. Then the question is, what is the focal date of an account? Now, this is at the same time introducing you to the next topic called annuity. Now, the focal date of an account says where a sum or sums of money is or are borrowed and amounts are paid against the loan. The balance at a given point is time or in time is calculated as follows. So in other words, the focal date, if let us say you borrow money, then you make payments against the money. That means you are making repayments. Hence it says the sums or sums of money that are borrowed and amounts are paid against the loan. That means you borrowed a money which is in the form of the loan, then you are making payments at regular or irregular intervals. When you say regular intervals, meaning it's consistent, every month you're making the payment, or every second month you're making the payment. Or you can make payment in month 1, you skip month 2, you make payment in month 4, skip months 5 and 6 and 7, you make payment in month 8. So that can be irregular intervals, but you're still making payments in repayment or against the loan that you have borrowed. So now that is what the focal date is, meaning you have a loan that needs to be paid over the period of 8 years, or you want to know how much will be the balance after a given point in time. So now this is what we will be focusing on. It says how to deal with the focal date where there's a loan and the repayments. What you do, you calculate the future value of the amounts borrowed at the required future time. And if you see there it says amount or amounts, that means you can borrow amounts at different time interval, and I will explain that when I'm done with these 3 bullet points in the underline. Then it says calculate the future value of the payments made against the loan at the same time future value. Very important theory to master. Then it says deduct the future value of the payments from the future value of the amounts borrowed. Now, what does this mean? Let us say we have this time period, and this time period is a time period of 5 years. And let us say we borrow. On top it will be money that is borrowed, at the bottom it will be the amount that is paid. So now let us say we borrow 3,500 at the beginning of the year, then this end of the year, this is year 2, this is year 3, this is year 4, this is year 5, and this is year 6. This is a period of 6 years. Therefore now the focal date in this case will be 6 years. Remember, focal date can be any other date that is given as focal date. Now if we borrow the amount of 3,500 in year 1, at the end of year 2 we decide to borrow another amount in addition, which in other words we can call it loan advance from a close corporation terminology in financial accounting 1. So we have a loan advance where we borrow another amount of money. And let us say now at the end of year 3 we make a payment. I want to put it in brackets. We make a payment of 2,000. It must be just different amount. We make a payment of 1,500, and at the end of year 5 we make a payment of 3,000 rands. So now at the bottom here it is repayments. At the bottom is repayments, on top is borrowing. That is where we borrow money. On top, at the bottom, that is where we make the payments of the amount that we borrowed. Now let's go to the first bullet point. The first bullet point says when it comes to the focal date, we need to calculate the future value of the amounts that are borrowed at the required future date. Remember, we borrowed 3,000 at the beginning of the year. So now for us to calculate the future value, we need to know how much is the value of the 3.5 at the end of 6 years, which is our focal date. That means we need to say this amount was borrowed for year 1, meaning beginning of the year, meaning it would have been borrowed for the full year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6. That means we need to calculate the future value of this amount for a period of 6 years. Then after now, we look for another amount because it said future value of the amounts or amounts borrowed. Then you say somewhere in year 2 we made another loan advance, or we made a borrowing again. We borrowed 2,000 at the end of year 2, meaning we would have borrowed this amount from year 2 to year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, which is, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So now we need to calculate the future value of this amount for a period of 4 years. So now we'll have the total future value here. Future value for these two amounts, it will be here as the total future value, which is calculate the future value of the amounts borrowed at the required future date. Now in this case, that will be future 6 years. Bullet point number 2 says calculate the future value of the payments made against the loan. These are the payments that were made against the loan, so we need to calculate their future value. Now the payment took place at the end of year 3, meaning when you calculate the future value, it will be for year 4, which is 1, year 5, and year 6, meaning the future value for this repayment of 1.5 will be for 1 to 3 years. So we need to calculate the future value for 3 years. Then after, there was another payment of 3,000 at the end of year 5, meaning it will be the future value for 1 year from year 5 to year 6. So now this will be the future value for 1 year. That means, remember, this 4 year is our N, this 6 years is our N, this 3 years is our N, and this 1 year is what you call N, meaning the number of time the amount was the future value must be, the number of years the future value must be calculated for. So that is what the focal date is all about. Then now the last part, they say we need to deduct the future value of the payments against the future value of the amounts borrowed. Then we do have the future value of the amounts borrowed. We need to say minus the future value of the payments, meaning the future value of that 1.5 at the end of year 6 and 3,000 at the end of year 6. We minus it, and that will give us the amount that is in the account at the focal date, meaning in this case at the end of 6 years. Now that has explained all the basics and the foundation, and with what I have said, I think you can just go straight to 3.11 and you respond to 3.11 without any of my help. But let me continue. It says a person borrowed how much? 8,000 rands at 12% per annum, compounded annually. Compounded annually. It's not always the case that it will be compounded annually, and when it's not compounded annually, it becomes very lovely a mind challenging question. It says he pays back how much? 2,500 at the end of year 1, year 2, and year 4. So now he makes payments at different time intervals, meaning irregular time interval. At least year 1 and year 2 was regular, but jumping to year 4 then became irregular time interval. Then it says if he makes no further payments, how much does he owe at the end of years 5, meaning at the end of year 5. The other question that I've hidden there that I would like you to respond to, I'll show you when I'm done with the calculation for this one. Now it says if this person now makes no further payments, he only pays year 1, year 2, and year 4, and he borrowed an amount of 8,000, how much will he be owing at the end of year 5? Now remember, what do we need? We need the future value of the amount borrowed, future value of the amounts borrowed at the required time. Now what will be our required time? Our required time will then be 5 years, meaning our focal date will be 5 years. So now we need to know the future value. So now let us calculate the future value of the loan at end year 5, at end of year 5. That is what we want to calculate. Then how to calculate the future value? Very easy. We can use the functions of the calculator, but the functions will take us time. We can just use the formula that says sum accumulated equals A being 8,000 is to 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1 because compounded once a year to the power of how many years? 5 times by 1, which give us 5. So this will give us the future value of the loan. So now we say 8,000 times by, open brackets, 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1, which gave us 12 at the same time. Oh, sorry. Open brackets, 8,000 times, open brackets, 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1, close brackets, equals, but we still need to take into account the power. Then I need to use now my normal ordinary calculator for the calculations. Then now it means our future value will be the 8,000 times 1 plus 0.12 to the power of 5. Now the amount that will be in the account, assuming no payments, will be 14,098. 14,098 rand 73 cents. Remember, we could have used the functions of the calculator to calculate this future value. How? I could have said plus minus 8,000 is our present value. Our interest, it is 12% divided by 1 because it's compounded once a year. Our n will be 5 times by 1. Number of years in a year is 1 year. Then we could have said comp future value. So you can still do that. Let us test it. Plus minus 8,000 is our present value. 12 is our I. 5 is our n. Compute future value is the same amount. So because this will take me more space, let me not use the functions of the calculator, just use the formula. Then now we need to calculate the future value of the payments. There were 3 payments that took place in year 1. So now we have PMT. Remember, PMT means payment. Payment 1. Payment 1, we have an amount of 2,500. Open brackets, 1 plus, we have the first payment. I squeeze it there. PMT 1. Payment 1, which is 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1 to the power of 5 times by 1. Remember, this will have to be deducted. So we have to say, oh, I wonder how did I forget you. The amount that was paid, it is 2,500. Open brackets, 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1 to the power of 5. Then you say 2,500 times, open brackets, 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1 to the power of 5. It is not 5 in this case. Again, why it is not 5, and I don't know why I'm making this mistake. Why it is not 5? Because the first payment took place at the end of year 1. That means now if we draw our line and we have year 5, this is year 1, this is year 2, this is year 3, this is year 3, this is year 4. That means the 2.5 payment here will be 1, 2, 3, 4. then meaning our n becomes 4 for the first payment, and the second payment that took place at the end of year 2, payment took place at the end of year 2, 2.5, it will be 1, 2, 3 years. Then the one at the end of year 4 will only be 1 year. So the future value of the first 2.5 will be for a period of 4 years. So now remember, this must be deducted. So now our power will be the power of 4, which is 3933. I get 3933.79, which is rounded off to 80.80. Then we say there was a second payment that was made, payment number 2. Payment number 2, how much did we pay? We paid 2.5, and this will be 1 plus 0.12 divided by 1 to the power of 3. Why do you say 3? Because end of year 2 will say 3, 4, 5, meaning our n will be 3 years. Therefore now that will be our future date of the payment that must be deducted. Remember, it must be deducted from the future value of the loan amounts or amount. 2.5 times open brackets 1 plus 0.12 close brackets to the power of 3. We get 3,512 or 3,512.32. Then we go to payment number 2. Payment number 3, PMT3, where the same amount of 2.5 was paid. Then we say 1 plus 0.12 to the power of 1. Then we calculate the future value of that 2.5 times to 1 plus 0.12. Then it gives me a whole amount of 2,800. So now this becomes the future value of the payments that took place. Fortunately, we made payments of the same amount. Sorry for the mistake I did in the beginning. I don't know, maybe the brain is just getting tired. Then now we go to the calculation of the amount that is owed. So now how much will be the balance in the account at the end of 5 years? If this person paid 2.5, 2.5 and 2.5 in year 1, year 2 and year 4, and he borrowed 8,000 beginning of year 0, and that amount stays there, and this is how much will be owing, assuming no payments. So now we say 2.8 plus 3512.32 plus 3933.80. Remember that there's a 0, even if there's no 0, it's 80 cents though. Then you say minus 14,098.73, and if you do that, you'll get 3852. This is the amount that will be in the account, 3852.61. This is the amount that will be in the account at the end of year 5. If this person borrowed 8,000 and makes payments of 2.5 end of year 1, and payment of 2.5 end of year 2, and payment of 2.5 at the end of year 4. Remember to keep it basic in terms of the principle. Calculate first the future value of the amount that is borrowed, and the future value of the amount is borrowed is this 14,000, because we borrowed 8,000, so the future value of that 8,000 after 5 years will be this amount. And step number 2 said, what do? We calculate the future value of the payments that were made against the loan at the same focal date or future term, meaning at the same 5 years, in other words. Therefore now we say 2.5 was borrowed, was paid at the end of year 1, so now that must be focal date, it will be 4 years. There the future value for 4 years. And 2.5 was paid at the end of year 2, meaning it will be for year 3, year 4, year 5. Therefore now the future value will be for 3 years. There our n is 3. And now payment of 2.5 made at the end of year 4, that means it will only be future value only for 1 year. And we take the future value of all these payments, we minus it from the amount that was borrowed, or the future value of the cash that was borrowed or loan that was borrowed. Therefore now that will give us the balance at the end of the focal date, meaning in this case at the end of 5 years. With that, guys, being said, thank you very much, and I would like you to attempt the same question, but do number B that I hid for you, number B and number C, where you will respond to the same scenario, but assuming that the focal date is 7 years and the focal date is 10 years. You apply the same principles, but you only change the focal date from 5 years to 7 years and 10 years in scenario number 2. With that, guys, thank you very much. I'll wait for you for the next question, which is 3.11. And 3.11 is still the focal date. Sorry, 3.12 is still the focal date, and 3.13 is still the focal date. But 3.12 says to us, we borrowed 6.8 today, and we borrowed 3.5 2 years later, and we paid 2.5, and in 3 years later, then after we paid 4.5 at the end of year 6. Then how much does the person owe at the end of 8 years? Now, two different amounts were borrowed, and two different amounts were paid. At the end of the date, all this must go to 8 years. All this must go to 8 years. All this must go to that 8 years, because 8 years is our focal date. Then after future value of the payments, in this case there are two payments, minus future value, future value of the amounts borrowed minus the future value of the payments or amounts paid, will give us the value or the amount owed at the end of 8 years. So that is coming after this current video. Thank you very much.